Alrighty, howdy. Am I centered? It is January the 30th, 2024. So I have been thinking about what my plans are for myself, for this channel, how I want to approach kind of every aspect of it. It's really not a perfect science, and it's probably more like art. You try things, you create, you explore, you see what happens. But the kind of interesting thing about art, I guess good artists develop a habit around creation, and then probably inexperienced or poor artists, maybe not, most artists are probably poor, bad artists, is that there's really no consistency to the creation. It's just sort of when it is inspired. And not that there's really anything like necessarily wrong with one or the other, but I think there's something to be said about consistency, as I've said in other videos. Today in particular, I was reflecting a lot on my life right now and how like the last set of years has been and where I see the next like 3 to 6 going. And if I'm being really honest with myself, I don't know that I've really thought too much about like a plan. And that's a really weird thing to say because I've always been a very driven person. I've always had goals, I've always had dreams. The problem is that in a lot of those areas, I don't know that I assigned, like I said before, a lot of consistency to the execution of the things that would get me to those goals. They just kind of stay as dreams. They just kind of like float in the ether. And it's not until we hit 35, 40, 50 before we realize that we never saw those things get actualized. It's also very easy to not have goals and not have plans because we don't want to be disappointed when those plans or those goals don't materialize in the way that we hoped they would. We don't set the goal because we're afraid that if we do and we don't hit it, then we'll be just upset with ourselves. And again, this goes back to this idea of, do you trust yourself? Have you built trust in yourself in order to gain more confidence around being able to execute things? When I was a kid, I was super, super driven. I would walk into the front door of my house growing up and immediately walk in and say homework. And I would literally right away go and sit at the desk and do homework and not do anything else for the day until I was done with my work. That's just like what I was sort of known for, is very, very focused and very, very driven. Despite being a kind of hyperactive child. So that, in tandem with my being a gymnast from like, I don't know, early middle school through my first year of college. And there's really no way to be successful as a gymnast without committing yourself. Like, it's kind of easy to be at your job and be half in, half out and like still get paid and still pay your bills and think that things are going well. But with gymnastics, you're either good or you're not, or you're either going to work harder than everybody else and show yourself as being good over a period of time because of your efforts. And for me, like, I was not a very good gymnast. Like, I was not naturally very good. Compared to a lot of the other kids who were doing it for a really long time and they were very good at it, like naturally very good at it. So I got good at it to a degree, but I was never great. And I'm comparing myself to Olympians because when I was in college, I went to the University of Oklahoma and I was literally training with Olympians, guys who were getting medals in the Olympics that following year. And so by comparison, not even remotely close to being that good. But my aim was the Olympics for the longest time. My aim was, I'm going to be an Olympic gymnast. I'm going to like aim for this goal. And I worked my butt off. Like throughout high school, I was waking up at 5 a.m. and going to practice for private lessons for an hour and a half, coming home, eating, studying, going to school, and then at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, going back to the gym for another 4 to 5 hours, and then coming home, eating, going immediately to sleep, and repeating the same thing. And that was 5 days a week. And then Saturday, I worked out like 5 hours. So I was very committed and very focused and very driven toward this goal. And that focus like really took me places. Even though I didn't like make it to the Olympics, like being on the team at OU, even as a walk-on, was like super great. But it also showed me that gymnastics was not what I wanted to do long-term, nor was I going to make it to the Olympics or be successful pretty much in any capacity in gymnastics. But I had a vision and I had a plan, and nobody told me it was ridiculous. Like even myself, of course I thought it was realistic. That's why I went for the goal. And then I think over time, you graduate and you start to maybe let yourself down a little bit, or not set as high of goals, or just stop really caring about like pushing yourself really hard so that, you know, goals and dreams kind of stay within reach, maintainable. I'm not saying that since that point I've been like goalless or planless. Like I'm in New York right now. I'm in New York right now because I want to act, write, direct. I want to be an architect. I'm an architect. I wanted to be in New York so that I could do all these things. I'm in New York. I'm taking acting classes. Like all of these things are kind of happening now, but I still think that it lacks a greater vision for what the years ahead look like. Maybe I'll talk about some of them now, but oh gosh, I don't know how much I want to get into. What I will share is that I met a good friend of mine I consider a good friend now. We only met like a few weeks ago, but he and I have been like bouncing off a lot of ideas back and forth around YouTube and TikTok and like how to grow. And so he and I were discussing our goals, just very loosely, what we sort of envisioned for our channels and whatnot. And for me, I was like, you know, I want to make a living out of this. Between this and architecture and writing and directing, like, I want this to be a thing. I don't mind the vocation of it, but like that's not really why I'm doing it. And I think for a while I didn't want to like admit that that's why I was doing it because it like took the purity out of it. But, like we want people to see our work. Ben Affleck hates fame. I mean, he literally talks about it. I'll put a link in the description to this clip where he talks about, says, I can't think of a time when fame ever benefited me. He goes, but nobody wants to perform to an empty house. So there's this balance between like, yeah, I want to perform. I want for there to be a big audience so that they can see this expression of myself, but I don't care so much for the fame. And I think I sit in that camp. Like I haven't shared my channel with many people. Like I haven't even posted on Instagram. Like my parents don't even know about it. Like very few people know about this channel unless you've stumbled upon it. It's not for me about the fame, but it is about growing it to be something that makes money, that makes me happy, that brings me joy on a daily basis and makes me feel like I'm firing on all cylinders. And so I set some pretty aggressive goals for myself when I was talking to Alex, the friend I just mentioned. And one of those goals was that I would basically try to double or triple my subscriber count every month and quadruple some of those, up to the point where by the end of the year, by the end of December, I would have at least 1 million subscribers, if not more. Now that's kind of insane because some people have been doing this for a long time and they don't even hit that point. But for me, like, I don't know. I want to set a really big plan. I want to try to go for it. I want to push myself to see if I can do it and just see what happens. Like, okay, let's say I hit half of my goal and I get to 500,000 by the end of the year. That's pretty good too. But my goal is 1 million. But the final thing that I kind of want to talk about is from a book that I read a while back. It was called The Devil in the White City. It's a historical nonfiction. It's about the Chicago World's Fair of 1890, was it 96? And it's interwoven with this other story around a serial killer that is basically on the loose during the time of the World's Fair. So the two stories that are happening side by side is it's the architects and the planners who are designing the World's Fair. And then there's this doctor who's basically like a serial killer. And then these stories are intertwined. But anyways, the architect's name is Daniel Burnham, and he has a quote in the book that I really loved, and I quote it all the time. But he says, "Make no little plans. They have no magic to stir men's blood, and probably will not themselves be realized." So in the book, it's just make no little plans. They have no magic to stir men's blood. But the entire quote is, make no little plans. They have no magic to stir men's blood, and probably will not themselves be realized. Make big plans. Aim high in hope and work, remembering that a noble, logical diagram once recorded will never die, but long after we are gone will be a living thing, asserting itself with ever-growing insistency. Remember that our sons and grandsons are going to do things that would stagger us. I freaking love that quote. Like, that just gets me fired up. Like, make no little plans. Make no little plans. Aim high. Why settle for something small? Why settle for anything that is less than exciting and makes your bones and your blood and everything just be like, fuck yeah, like, let's do this. And I haven't had that in a really long time. Like, I love architecture. I love my life. There are parts about it that I would change, but for the most part, I love it. And I'm grateful for all those things. But I've been very planless. I've been very goalless. I haven't been looking far enough ahead or thinking in a grandiose way or an excited way. I've kind of been settling. So with that, I believe that there is power in stating what it is that you want and how you want to go for it. And this is sort of my proclamation to that. So whatever that looks like, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to try it. If you're watching this and you're like, I love that, I want some of that, do it. Aim high. Put it in the comments. Tell me what you're dreaming. Tell me what you're excited about. Send me a DM on Instagram and let's talk about it. This is the exciting part of creation. So, and then if this resonates with you as well and you want to share it with someone, share it with someone. I'm really hoping that this channel grows with some organic something or other. I don't want it to just be something that I'm shouting it to everybody. I'd love it if you shared it with people and they found excitement in it as well. So I think that's it for the night. I am very tired and not feeling well, so I'm going to check out. But this was fun. Tonight was a good one. Make no little plans. They have no magic to stir men's blood. Remember that. That's it. Okay. All right. I'm going. Goodbye.